Hollywood worshipped them. Fans adored them. Then came the mugshots, prison cells, scandals, addictions, and collapses no publicist could hide. These stars didn't just fall from fame, they crashed into nightmares darker than any movie script. Some clawed their way back. Others lost everything. And the most shocking story is still ahead. Number 1, Danny Masterson. For years, Danny Masterson was Hyde the sarcastic rebel, lounging in Eric Foreman's basement on That 70s Show. Millions laughed with him. Then the sitcom glow vanished. In 2023, a Los Angeles jury convicted Masterson of raping 2 women in separate 2003 attacks, turning a familiar TV face into the center of one of Hollywood's darkest courtroom stories. The case had taken years to reach that verdict. The women were former Scientologists who testified that fear of consequences within the church helped keep them silent. Prosecutors argued that Masterson's status inside Scientology helped shield him, while the church denied protecting him. His first trial ended with a deadlocked jury. The retrial did not. On September 7, 2023, the sentence landed 30 years to life. The applause tracks, premieres, and red carpets were suddenly replaced by prison gates and an inmate number. After several transfers, Masterson was moved to California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo, where he remains incarcerated while continuing to challenge his convictions. There is something brutally ironic about the fall. Hyde was the guy who always seemed too cool to face consequences. Masterson's real life ended very differently. His lawyers are still fighting for a new trial, but for now, the man once watched by millions from their couches is watching years disappear behind prison walls. A chilling reminder that fame may delay a reckoning, but it can never guarantee escape. Number 2, Harvey Weinstein. At the height of his power, Harvey Weinstein did not just make movies. He made careers, collected Oscars, and moved through Hollywood like a man no one dared tell no. Then the curtain ripped open. In 2017, investigations unleashed allegations from scores of women, and the mogul, who once decided who became a star, became the face of Hollywood's ugliest secret. What followed was a spectacular collapse. Weinstein lost his company, his status, and his freedom as accusers described a pattern of using fame, access, and career promises to get women alone. His 2020 New York conviction seemed like the final scene until the state's highest court overturned it in 2024 because of trial errors. The courtroom doors opened again. In 2025, a Manhattan jury convicted Weinstein of a criminal sex act involving former production assistant Miriam Haley, while acquitting him on another charge. A separate rape count involving Jessica Mann ended without a verdict and was dropped in June 2026 after she said she could not endure another trial. Now the former kingmaker sits behind bars, far from premieres and champagne. His California rape and sexual assault convictions were upheld in 2026, although his 16-year sentence must be imposed again. The irony is almost cinematic. A man who once controlled endings for a living can no longer control his own. Hollywood gave him power, but the women who spoke up changed the script forever. Number 3, R. Kelly. The voice that once made arenas sing now echoes from a federal prison. R. Kelly was not simply famous. He was an R&B giant, a Grammy winner whose I Believe I Can Fly became an anthem heard around the world. But behind the platinum records and screaming crowds, prosecutors said, a disturbing system was operating for years, one built around fame, control, young women, and underage girls. Then the music stopped. In 2021, a Brooklyn jury convicted Kelly of racketeering and sex trafficking-related crimes after witnesses described isolation, intimidation, abuse, and an entourage that helped bring victims into his orbit. In June 2022, the judge handed him 30 years in federal prison. For a man who once sang about flying, the irony was almost cruel. Freedom had suddenly become the one thing his fame could not buy. Chicago delivered another brutal chapter. In 2022, Kelly was convicted of 3 counts of producing child pornography and 3 counts of enticing minors into sexual activity. The following year, he received another 20-year sentence with 1 year running consecutively to his New York term. That effectively left him facing about 31 years behind bars. Kelly kept fighting, but the courtroom doors kept shutting. A federal appeals court upheld his New York conviction and sentence in February 2025, and the Supreme Court refused to hear his challenge that June. As of 2026, he remains incarcerated at FCI Butner Medium in North Carolina while seeking clemency. Once crowds screamed his name under blinding stage lights. Now his legacy is measured not in hit records, but in convictions, victims, and decades behind prison walls. Number 4. Sean Diddy Combs. Private jets, sold-out parties, bad boy records, and an empire built on swagger made Sean Diddy Combs look almost untouchable. He helped shape hip-hop, launched careers, collected Grammys, and turned his name into a global brand. But while cameras captured the champagne, prosecutors later painted a far darker picture of what allegedly happened when the doors closed. Then one hotel hallway changed everything. In 2024, surveillance footage from 2016 surfaced, showing Combs punching, kicking, shoving, and dragging his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, while wearing only a towel. The images were brutal, impossible to polish with a publicist, and suddenly, the mogul famous for controlling his image had lost control of the story. When the federal verdict finally arrived in July 2025, it was not the total legal apocalypse prosecutors had pursued. A Manhattan jury acquitted Combs of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking, but convicted him on 2 counts of transporting people for prostitution under the Mann Act. 3 months later, the judge sentenced him to 50 months in federal prison, 5 years of supervised release, and a $500,000 fine. Now the man who once threw some of Hollywood's most exclusive parties is serving time at FCI Fort Dix in New Jersey while appealing his conviction and sentence. The irony almost writes itself. Diddy spent decades turning his name into a symbol of power, luxury, and control. Today, that same name is attached to prison records, courtroom sketches, and one of the most spectacular falls hip-hop has ever witnessed. Number 5. Robert Downey Jr. Before Tony Stark ever built a suit of armor, Robert Downey Jr. was busy watching his own life fall apart. In 1996, police stopped him in California and found cocaine, heroin, and a firearm in his vehicle. More arrests, failed drug tests, and rehab followed. Hollywood still saw the talent, but hiring him was becoming a gamble few studios wanted to take. By 1999, the second chances had run out. A judge sentenced Downey to 3 years in state prison for violating probation. The actor, who had once earned an Oscar nomination for Chaplin, was suddenly wearing prison clothes instead of designer suits. He served roughly a year before his release in 2000, but freedom alone did not magically fix the addiction that had nearly swallowed him whole. The real plot twist arrived in 2003. Downey said he finally made the personal decision to stop using drugs, and slowly the doors reopened. The singing detective helped put him back on screen. Then, in 2008, Iron Man exploded. The man studios once struggled to ensure became Tony Stark, the swaggering billionaire who helped launch one of the biggest movie franchises in history. Hollywood loves a comeback, but this one almost sounds too ridiculous for Hollywood. Prisoner to superhero, career wreck to global icon. And in 2024, Downey completed the circle by winning his first Academy Award for Oppenheimer. Tony Stark spent years saving the universe, but Robert Downey Jr.'s greatest rescue may have happened long before Marvel ever called. He somehow found a way to save himself. Number 6. Britney Spears. There was a time when Britney Spears seemed to own pop culture itself. One schoolgirl uniform, one unforgettable chorus, and suddenly, the teenager from Louisiana was everywhere. Then fame stopped looking glamorous. A divorce custody battle's relentless paparazzi, and the infamous 2007 head-shaving episode turned her private pain into global entertainment. Millions watched, while one of the biggest stars alive appeared to unravel in real time. What came next was even stranger. In 2008, a court placed Britney under a conservatorship that eventually gave others enormous control over her personal and financial decisions. Yet she kept recording, touring, judging television competitions, and performing a hugely successful Las Vegas residency. The contradiction became impossible to ignore. If she could earn millions on stage, fans asked, why did she need someone else controlling her life? The question exploded into the Free Britney movement. November 2021 finally brought the moment supporters had demanded. A Los Angeles judge terminated this conservatorship after nearly 14 years. Britney later reclaimed her story in the best-selling memoir, The Woman in Me, describing years in which she felt other people had spoken for her. For once, the pop princess was no longer performing someone else's script. She was writing her own. But freedom did not magically erase every scar. In March 2026, Spears was arrested after police said she drove erratically while impaired. She later pleaded guilty to a reduced reckless driving charge, received probation, and entered treatment voluntarily. It was another painful headline, but this time the story looked different. Britney was not trapped inside a court-controlled life. She was facing the consequences herself. After decades of being watched, judged, controlled, and consumed by fame, perhaps, her hardest comeback is not returning to the stage. It is learning how to live when the spotlight finally belongs to her. Number 7. Johnny Depp. Few Hollywood faces were once more bankable than Johnny Depp. Edward Scissorhands made him strange and irresistible. Pirates of the Caribbean turned Captain Jack Sparrow into a billion-dollar phenomenon. But behind the eyeliner, swagger, and eccentric charm, Depp's private life was becoming far messier than any movie plot. Years of substance use, a volatile marriage, and tabloid chaos slowly transformed Hollywood's mysterious heartthrob into one of its most controversial stars. The real explosion came after his marriage to Amber Heard collapsed. Both accused the other of abuse, turning their relationship into a worldwide courtroom spectacle. In 2020, Depp lost a libel case in Britain after a judge ruled that a newspaper had substantially proven its allegations about his behavior toward Heard. His attempt to overturn that decision failed the following year. Suddenly, Captain Jack looked less like an untouchable pirate and more like a man watching his Hollywood ship sink. Virginia flipped the script in 2022. A jury found Heard liable for defaming Depp in 3 statements connected to her 2018 OPE, awarding him millions, while also finding Depp liable on 1 count of Heard's counterclaim through comments made by his lawyer. The appeals were later settled with Heard agreeing to pay Depp $1 million. After weeks of testimony streamed around the world, Depp walked away with something money could not fully measure: a major shift in public perception. Then came Cannes. In 2023, Depp returned to the red carpet as King Louis XV in Jean du Barry, greeted by cheering fans and renewed controversy. He rejected the word comeback, insisting he had never really gone anywhere. Maybe that is the strangest punchline of all. Hollywood once treated Johnny Depp like damaged goods, yet the man famous for playing ghosts, pirates, and outsiders somehow survived becoming one himself. The face may look more weathered now, but the spotlight has not finished following him. Number 8. Macaulay Culkin. Imagine being 10 years old and already more famous than most actors will ever become. Macaulay Culkin became the face of an entire generation after Home Alone turned Kevin McAllister into a worldwide icon. My Girl, Richie Rich, screaming fans, enormous paychecks, cameras everywhere. It looked like every kid's fantasy. Behind the smile, however, Culkin later described a far more complicated childhood, including a deeply troubled relationship with his father and the crushing machinery of child stardom. Instead of chasing Hollywood forever, he practically vanished. After Richie Rich, Culkin stepped away from major movie roles for years, trying to reclaim something fame had stolen from him: an ordinary life. Then came another kind of headline. In 2004, he was arrested in Oklahoma after police found marijuana and prescription medication during a traffic stop. Years later, frighteningly thin photographs fueled sensational stories of severe drug addiction. Culkin admitted he had played with some fire, but strongly rejected the most extreme heroin claims. The strange part is that Hollywood kept waiting for the classic child star disaster. Culkin refused to deliver it. He returned selectively through projects like Party Monster Saved American Horror Story and his deliberately bizarre bunny ears venture. Rather than beg for his old crown back, he seemed almost amused by it, treating fame like an embarrassing childhood photo everyone else insisted on framing. Then, in December 2023, the kid who once looked abandoned by Hollywood received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Brenda Song and their children were there as Culkin became visibly emotional. It was a surprisingly tender ending to a story tabloids once tried to turn into a tragedy. Kevin McAllister spent Home Alone desperately trying to get his family back. Macaulay Culkin spent much of adulthood escaping the chaos fame gave him, only to eventually build a family and a life on his own terms. Number 9. Brendan Fraser. Hollywood once treated Brendan Fraser like he was indestructible. He swung through jungles in George of the Jungle, battled ancient monsters in The Mummy, and became one of the most lovable action stars of the late 90s. But while audiences saw the fearless Rick O'Connell, Fraser's body was quietly breaking down. Years of punishing stunts eventually led to multiple surgeries and long stretches in hospitals. Then came a wound no surgeon could repair. Fraser revealed in 2018 that former Hollywood Foreign Press Association president Philip Burke had groped him at a 2003 luncheon. Burke disputed Fraser's account, but Fraser said the incident left him depressed, humiliated, and retreating from Hollywood. His marriage also ended, his leading man era faded, and suddenly one of cinema's most recognizable faces seemed to disappear. Years passed before the world truly noticed him again. When Fraser appeared in The Whale as Charlie, a severely obese and isolated teacher desperate to reconnect with his daughter, the performance hit audiences like an emotional wrecking ball. At the Venice premiere, Fraser received a roaring standing ovation. The forgotten action hero was suddenly standing in the spotlight again, visibly overwhelmed as Hollywood welcomed him back. And then came the ending. Even Hollywood could not have scripted better. In March 2023, Brendan Fraser won the Academy Award for Best Actor. The man whose body had been battered, whose confidence had collapsed, and whose career once seemed finished, was holding an Oscar. Rick O'Connell survived mummies' curses and collapsing temples, but Brendan Fraser's greatest escape was far more real somehow. After Hollywood nearly buried him, he climbed all the way back into the light. Number 10. Amanda Bynes. America once watched Amanda Bynes make chaos look adorable. From All That and The Amanda Show to She's the Man and Hairspray, she had the face timing and fearless comedy Hollywood loves to turn into a fortune. Then, almost without warning, the laughter stopped. In 2010, Bynes walked away from acting, and the bubbly Nickelodeon queen soon became the subject of headlines no childhood fan expected. What followed looked like Hollywood chewing up another child star in public. Arrests, erratic behavior, substance abuse, and serious mental health struggles replaced movie premieres. By 2013, her parents sought court protection, and Amanda was placed under a conservatorship controlling major parts of her personal and financial life. The girl who once seemed capable of playing anyone suddenly appeared to have lost control of her own story. But Amanda's story refused to end with a mugshot. Away from Hollywood, she pursued fashion studies, worked on her health, and gradually rebuilt enough independence to ask the court for her freedom. In March 2022, after nearly 9 years, a California judge terminated the conservatorship with the support of her parents. It was not a flashy comeback. There was no red carpet, no blockbuster sequel, just something far more valuable: control of her own life again. Today, Bynes remains largely outside acting, experimenting, instead with art, fashion, and creative projects. Hollywood may still remember the wide-eyed comedy star it once adored, but Amanda seems less interested in becoming that girl again. And perhaps that is the irony. An industry built on transformations spent years obsessing over how much Amanda Bynes had changed, while her biggest transformation was simply learning to live without performing for everyone else. Number 11. Ruby Franke. Ruby Franke sold America a picture of family perfection. On 8 Passengers, millions watched the Utah mother of 6 turn parenting into content and advice. Then, in August 2023, that polished image shattered when her 12-year-old son escaped from Jodi Hildebrandt's home, injured, malnourished, and with duct tape around his wrists and ankles, begging a neighbor for help. Inside the house, police found another child hiding in a closet. Investigators later described a horrifying system of punishment involving food and water, deprivation, forced labor, in extreme heat, isolation, beatings, and restraints. Authorities said Franke and Hildebrandt believed the children needed to repent for imagined sins and linked the abuse to religious extremism. December brought the confession. Franke pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse, admitting severe physical and emotional mistreatment of her 2 youngest children. In court, the woman who had built a brand telling other parents how to raise a family apologized to the children she had failed to protect. On February 20, 2024, the judge imposed 4 consecutive prison terms with Utah law, limiting the total to 30 years. The state parole board will determine how long she actually remains behind bars. The irony is brutal. Ruby became famous by putting family life on camera, but what happened when the cameras were off destroyed the picture-perfect story forever. Number 12. Jen Shah. Jen Shah didn't enter reality TV quietly. On The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, she arrived dripping in designer clothes, throwing explosive parties and flaunting a lifestyle built to make viewers ask one question: where did all that money come from? Then federal agents came looking for her, and suddenly the answer became far less glamorous. Prosecutors said Shah had spent years helping run a nationwide telemarketing scheme that preyed on vulnerable people, many of them elderly. The operation was brutally simple. Victims were sold promises of business opportunities, coaching, and services that prosecutors said had little or no real value. Some lost thousands. Others lost life-changing sums they could never recover. Shah initially insisted she was innocent, even turning the investigation into another dramatic storyline for television. But in July 2022, just before trial, the performance ended. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. January 2023 delivered the bill. A federal judge sentenced Shah to 78 months in prison, 5 years of supervised release, and ordered her to pay millions in restitution and forfeiture. The woman famous for Shah Squad assistance, luxury vacations, and screaming matches was headed not to another reunion special, but to federal prison. Hollywood loves a plot twist, but even Bravo could not manufacture one this savage. And that may be the darkest irony of Jen Shah's story. Reality television made extravagance her character, yet prosecutors said the money behind that image came from people who could least afford to lose it. The designer closets are gone. The champagne is gone. What remains is a spectacular cautionary tale about greed, fame, and the moment a carefully produced reality show collided with very real consequences. Number 13. Michael Jace. For years, Michael Jace wore a badge on television. As Officer Julian Lowe on FX's The Shield, he played a cop navigating violence, morality, and consequences. Then fiction collided with reality in the darkest possible way. On May 19, 2004, inside the family's Los Angeles home, Jace fatally shot his wife April Jace while their 2 young sons were present. The actor who once portrayed law enforcement suddenly became the subject of a real murder investigation. The tragedy grew even more chilling in court. Prosecutors said the marriage was collapsing, and April wanted a divorce. Their 10-year-old son testified that he heard his father taunt his mother before another shot was fired. Jace's defense argued that he had snapped in the heat of passion and had not intended to kill her. The jury rejected any path to freedom, finding him guilty of second-degree murder in May 2016. Sentencing day stripped away whatever remained of the Hollywood image. Jace apologized to April's family, saying there was absolutely no justification for what he had done. Tears filled the courtroom, but remorse could not undo the horror or restore a mother to her children. On June 10, 2016, the judge sentenced him to 40 years to life in state prison. The irony is almost too brutal for a screenplay. Michael Jace spent years pretending to uphold the law on television, only to spend decades living under the punishment of the real one. Court records from 2026 show him still incarcerated in California. The Shield once made his face recognizable to millions. Today, his most unforgettable role is no longer the officer he played, but the irreversible tragedy he created when the cameras were gone. Number 14. Ryan Grantham. Ryan Grantham seemed like another young Canadian actor building a future. He appeared in Diary of the Wimpy Kid, Supernatural, and Riverdale, with bigger opportunities ahead. Then, on March 31, 2020, everything collapsed. At 21, Grantham shot and killed his mother, Barbara Waite, while she was playing piano inside their home in Squamish, British Columbia. What investigators discovered next made the story even darker. Grantham packed his car with guns, ammunition, and Molotov cocktails, then drove with plans that included violence against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He never carried them out. Instead, he abandoned the plan and turned himself in. Court evidence later showed that he had been suffering from major depressive disorder and heavy cannabis use, adding a tragic layer to the crime. In 2022, Grantham pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received a mandatory life sentence with no chance to apply for parole for 14 years. The irony is brutal. A young actor who once lived inside fictional drama ended up creating a real tragedy no script could soften. His career did not fade slowly. It ended in one irreversible act that took his mother's life and locked his own future behind prison walls.